what comes next. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. Don't you want to read the rest of the poem? I have to wait until the end of the episode and go find it. How about this one? Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. These are powerful poems, powerful lines. You go find them. You won't be disappointed. Read a few at a time and see where they take you. Now, she mentioned something else in the second letter to Higginson that Higginson quoted. The terror. I felt the terror. What is the terror? What could it be? We don't know. It's never been explained definitively. There have been a lot of guesses, a number of different things that it might be. It is disorienting to read about this terror, especially in her penmanship. Higginson picked up on this. Her penmanship is really something you should find and take a look at. It's elegant and stately, but it is as if viewed through a cloud. It seems to get the feeling that words were floating above the page, and then they just dotted themselves down once in a while, as if they were being stamped, or as if the letters of the alphabet, it's as if they were butterflies. Higginson called them fossil bird tracks. Maybe gentle birds. I think of butterflies, though. The tracks butterflies might leave. A plashless pen. What was the terror? We were talking about the terror. What was the terror? Was it connected to the Civil War, which had just started? She said that the terror she felt was in September 1861. Could have been connected with the Civil War, which had started a few months before that. Was it a premonition of death? Her own death? Or her absorbing and contemplating the Civil War and the death and devastation that was bringing? Did she feel her illness coming on? Was it something in her brain? Some form of anxiety, of depression? Some kind of mood swing? What was it? We do not know. It was a terror. Emily's terror. A secret. Part of the myth. Something for us to see and to think about permeating through her poetry and our understanding of it. But it's not ours to really know. It's not ours to define, to put in a box. It's kind of like her poems. Maybe there is no right answer, no single right answer. Maybe there are some likely, some less likely, some interpretations that are just kind of there, hovering, possible. I mentioned before that there were myths about Emily Dickinson that I'd like to wash away. One of them is the sort of view of Emily that she's poor Emily. She's a victim of her own debilitating shyness. She had her nose in her books and on the landscape outside her window, but she could never bring herself to feel true emotion because she was a shut-in. She couldn't get out in the world. I don't think that's right. First of all, we do see a great depth of feeling in her letters, as well as in her poems, of course, and there are enough suggestions of her interpersonal relationships to think we have no more reason to think of her as a shut-in as we have to think of her as a selective lover, using lover in whatever sense of the term you like. We have testimonials of people who knew her. In this case, Higginson sent letters to his wife about Emily Dickinson, and we have those, and they give an amazing picture of his visits to her. So we see her, she kind of comes to life, but she's still something of a mystery. Higginson describes the house, and then he says, a step like a pattering child's in entry, and in glided a little plain woman with two smooth bands of reddish hair and a face a little like bell doves, not plainer, with no good feature, in a very plain and exquisitely clean white peak and a blue net worsted shawl. She came to me with 2 daylilies, which she put in a sort of childlike way into my hand and said, "These are my introduction," in a soft, frightened, breathless, childlike voice, and added under her breath, "Forgive me if I am frightened. I never see strangers and hardly know what I say." But she talked soon and thenceforward continuously and deferentially, sometimes stopping to ask me to talk instead of her, but readily recommencing. Manner between Angie Tilton and Mr. Alcott, but thoroughly ingenuous and simple, which they are not, and saying many things which you would have thought foolish and I wise, and some things you would have liked. I add a few over the page. And then he quotes here some things that Emily Dickinson has said during their conversation. She says, "Truth is such a rare thing, it is delightful to tell it." She says, "I find ecstasy in living. The mere sense of living is joy enough." She says, "Could you tell me what home is? Higginson is just writing these down, just making lists of them because he's probably trying to figure them out. Women talk, men are silent. That is why I dread women. I like this one. My father only reads on Sunday. He reads lonely and rigorous books. She says, how do most people live without any thoughts? There are many people in the world. You must have noticed them in the street. How do they live? How do they get strength to put on their clothes in the morning? She had some trouble with her vision, and she says, when I lost the use of my eyes, it was a comfort to think there were so few real books that I could easily find someone to read me all of them. She says, I never had a mother. I suppose a mother is one to whom you hurry when you are troubled. I never knew how to tell time by the clock till I was 15. My father thought he had taught me, but I did not understand, and I was afraid to say I did not, and afraid to ask anyone else, lest he should know. This is a person, it seems to me, I think it seemed to Higginson, that this is a person who is thinking in poetry. Her mind is jumping around. She's grabbing things. She's grabbing thoughts. The thoughts are floating in. She's grabbing them and trying to pin them down. Just like she's pinning down words to put on the page in between those dashes. Now I want to talk about a couple of geniuses in my own life. My two children. They're not geniuses, of course, but like any good parent, I think that they are. And I especially thought that when they were toddlers, because children at that age are marvelous and wonderful, and they learn and grow so quickly.
For the you-know-what.
If you complain once more, you'll meet an army of me. We're talking about Emily Dickinson today, the bard of Amherst, the queen of American poetry, the tucked-away gem. I don't want to try too many nicknames here, because one of the things we're going to talk about is how her reputation has been seen throughout the generations. There are different ways to see her. I'll tell you what I think is the best way, but there have been others. I think some of them have gotten her wrong. But in any case, I don't think anyone doubts that she was a genius. But what do we mean by that term? John Lennon was asked if he considered himself a genius, and his answer was, well, if there is such a thing, then I am one. It's hard to dispute. Actually, the whole quote is fascinating. It will help set up what we're going to talk about today. Let me read the whole thing. This is from the interview with Jan Wenner in 1970. But actually, before we get to that, let's read an email first. Oh, there's someone knocking at the door.
Hello, I'm Oliver.
Oh, Oliver.
More gruel, please, sir. That's all I'm asking for. And guess who's been doling out the gruel here at the workhouse?
Who's that, Oliver?
Why, it's that insufferable drudge, Mr. Jack Wilson.
Yes, we know.
I guess he ain't a bad sort when he's not jawing my ear off about some chap named Dickens.
Yes.
I couldn't care
You've
less about
said
me
all
and some
this
old
before,
writer fellow,
Oliver.
but I would like
We've
some more
heard
gruel.
you.
Won't you please throw a few shillings at Mr. Wilson so he can spare another spoonful of slop for me and the other lads? We'll consider ourselves grateful.
Oliver. I think this might be the last time we're going to hear from you, Oliver. Just in time for the holidays. I think we're going to lock up that little lad. Ever notice that Oliver doesn't just arrive? He has the poorhouse in the background. It's like Pigpen walking around with his own cloud of dust. Oliver knocks on the door here, and when it opens, you can hear the children. It's like the studio door turns into a portal to a London cafeteria. It's incredible. Also incredible is the brand new History of Literature shop, which you can find at historyofliterature.com/shop. There you can buy tote bags, mugs, and virtual coffees for me, Jack Wilson. That's basically a donation. It's another way to put it. If you would like to support the show as a Patreon, you can head on over to patreon.com/literature. So there are 3 options for you this holiday season. You can buy stuff. You can give a one-time donation, which is the virtual coffee, or sign up to be a Patreon, which is an ongoing donation for as little as $1 a month, payable with your credit card or PayPal account. We just fixed the virtual coffee, by the way. It was broken, but now it's ready for action. And I would be very grateful for your support. Happy holidays, everyone. But where were we? An email, then John Lennon, then Emily Dickinson. That's today on the History of Literature. Today on the History of Literature.
Coincidence that happened. Follow the dots. Coincidence makes sense. Only with you. You don't have to speak. I feel emotional landscapes. They pass on me. The little get solved, and you push me up to this state of emergency. How beautiful to be state of.
Dear Jack, I just wanted to reach out to let you know I really enjoy your podcast and its Epicurean approach to literature. As a graduate student in literature, I often find myself applying this podcast as a healing balm during my commute. It helps remind me why I'm doing what I'm doing, that these are, at the end of the day, still delicacies I'm gorging myself on. So far, my favorite episodes were the one on bad poetry and the one on overrated books. I wonder what that says about me. Well, emailer, I think it says you have some fellow travelers out there. Those are two very popular episodes. Also, the one on Madame Bovary. I should probably put together a top 10 list or something. I think we're around the 2-year anniversary mark at some point this month. If my producer were competent, he might remind me of that. And that's him objecting. An incompetent form of objection, let the record show. He can't even get that right. Anyway, our emailer recommends a few things for upcoming episodes, which were excellent suggestions and went right on the list. Then he concluded, anyway, thanks again for all the great work you do. Keep them coming. Cheers, Joshua. Well, thank you, Joshua. I love to hear from listeners, and I appreciate your taking the time to send me the email. I'm so pleased to hear that you find literature to be akin to delicacies. That's true. These are nourishing and sustaining, but they're also treats. Bonbons for the soul. I'm glad these podcast episodes help remind you of that. So let's get to John Lennon so we can start talking about Emily Dickinson and also my kids and Bjork. It all makes sense. I think we'll have to see how this all goes and comes together. Now, I may have talked about this quote before because I'm fascinated by the idea of genius, and it's rare that a genius talks about what it's like to be a genius. We want to get into Emily Dickinson's head a little bit because there's a mystery to her that we want to get to the bottom of. She's not like you and me, or maybe she is, or maybe we don't know. She wrote some wild and unusual and visionary poetry. She had a particular kind of writing that I think is special. But in any case, it might help to hear what John Lennon said when he was asked about whether he was a genius. Yes, he said, if there is such a thing as one, I am one. And then Jan Wenner asked, when did you first realize it? And Lennon gave this incredible answer. When I was about 12, I used to think, I must be a genius, but nobody's noticed. Then he laughed. He said, either I'm a genius or I'm mad. Which is it? No, I said, I can't be mad because nobody's put me away. Therefore, I'm a genius. Genius is a form of madness, and we're all that way, but I used to be a bit coy about it, like me guitar playing. If there's a thing such as genius, which is just what? What the F is it? I am one. And if there isn't, I don't care. Because I used to think, when I was a kid, writing my poetry and doing me paintings, I didn't become something when the Beatles made it or you heard about me. I've been like this all my life. Genius is pain, too. It's just pain. Just pain. The interview goes on, but I think that's good. That's enough. It's worth your time. If you want to seek it out, you can find it online. There's so much there. We're all mad. He says, how many artists have felt this? The creative output is something like madness, maybe. Let's start talking about Emily Dickinson so we can clear away some myths and talk about her poetry and her as a literary figure. Emily Dickinson was born in December of 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts, where she lived for almost all of her life. She was born into a distinguished family. Her grandfather founded Amherst College, and her father was one of its leaders and was also elected to the state legislature. It was the sort of family where Ralph Waldo Emerson turned up and stayed when he was on one of his lecture tours, though it seems that Emily stayed next door during that visit, never meeting the man, even though she admired his poetry greatly. She received a good early education, not just good for girls, but an outstanding education, really a top-notch education, though she left school as a teenager. Why she left is a bit of a mystery. Some say she was too shy and sensitive. Others say her father pulled her out for some reason. Both could be true, or neither. We don't know. She was close to her siblings, and she had some close friendships, including with her sister-in-law, Susan Gilbert, who lived next door. She had some meaningful correspondences. Her love life, if it's correct to call it that, has been the source of endless fascination and speculation.
I'm not going to get into that here. I'd like to think she experienced love to the point of happiness in whatever form that took. I don't know exactly what that would be for Emily, though my guess is it would not be conventional, and it would be fruitless for us to try to imagine it as anything else. She died of kidney disease at the age of 55. Apart from a trip to Philadelphia that she took in her 20s, she rarely left the walking distance circumference of her house in Amherst. She never married, though she seems to have been proposed to at least once. She also never joined a church, even though her parents and siblings and friends did. She said in a letter, quote, "I am one of the lingering bad ones," end quote. Upon her death, it was discovered that she had written hundreds of poems, written, revised, sometimes rewritten, and stitched them into little booklets. Those 1,800 poems written in her startling and original poetic style, ranging across subjects that she knew about or that intrigued her, such as nature, religion, war, the self, love, medicine, law, science and technology, domestic life, death, commerce, fashion, birds, bugs, poetry, and the arts. These 1,800 poems might be the greatest creative output by anyone ever in America, male or female, poet or novelist or artist or composer. There's no one like Emily Dickinson. The woman who barely left her house now has a worldwide reach. She belongs on every shelf in every library in every country in the world. During her lifetime, she published very little, a handful of poems, which were edited to the point where everything startling and original was bled out of them. But she knew she was a poet. How do we know that? We know from her actions and her letters. Is that like John Lennon knowing he was a genius? Maybe. And what about Bjork, our Icelandic avatar? How does she fit in? Hang on, listeners. We're getting to all of that. We just need to hang on for the ride.
The publishing industry is a system.
Books are mirrors into people's experiences.
And in Season 2 of Missing Pages, we'll take a look at what happens when an old system faces new challenges.
This is what happens when you involve money.
I'm Beth Ann Patrick, literary critic, writer, and your host of Season 2 of the Missing Pages podcast. A show that gives you a ringside seat to some of the juiciest conflicts in the book world. In Season 2, we're turning up the dial.
She was in pretty much a stratosphere all around.
The term is academic fraud.
Teachers in Florida had to cover up their bookshelves for fear of getting sanctioned or fired.
We'll dig into these stories with industry insiders and talk to authors like Jodi Picoult for their first-hand experiences.
You can child-proof your world, but you can't world-proof your child.
It's time we find these missing pages and return them to their stories. Listen and subscribe to Season 2 wherever you get your podcasts.
Oh, yeah. Thousands of new arrivals just dropped in your Nordstrom Rack store, starting at only $30. Now you can save